Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into the world of whaling. Moby-Dick.
Oh, a classic.
Right. And we're doing this deep dive, because of all the interest from you listeners out there. It seems Moby-Dick still has people hooked.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just some simple adventure story about a captain and a whale.
Oh, definitely not. There's so much more going on beneath the surface, like layers, you know?
Exactly. It's about obsession, nature, good versus evil, all those big questions, really.
It really makes you think about humanity, our place in the world.
So today, we're going to uncover the reality of whaling back in the 19th century.
It wasn't all singing sea shanties and whatnot, that's for sure.
We'll also talk about the symbolism of a white whale. Why white? What does it all mean?
Yes, the color white. So much there to unpack.
And of course, we'll get into Melville's characters, especially those aboard the Pequod.
A motley crew, each with their own story to tell. A microcosm of society, almost.
And to help us navigate this epic tale, I've got our expert with us today.
Glad to be here. Moby-Dick is a book that, it keeps giving. Always something new to discover.
So let's jump right in. Can you set the scene for us? What was life like on a whale ship back then? I imagine it was no walk in the park.
You're telling me these voyages, they could last for years. Years! Crammed onto a tiny wooden ship, exposed to the elements, storms, disease, giant whales.
Yikes. I can't even imagine.
And forget about luxury. It was all about practicality, survival.
The book centers around the Pequod. It seems like more than just a ship, though, right?
Exactly. Melville uses the Pequod, as this sort of microcosm of society. You've got the captain, the mates, the harpooneers, all these different nationalities and backgrounds working together, but also within a very strict hierarchy.
Kind of like the world itself, with all its power dynamics and whatnot.
Precisely. It's fascinating how Melville, weaves those themes into the story. And then you have the harpooneers. Talk about bravery, facing those massive creatures head on.
Oh, yeah. The danger involved, I can't even... It must take an incredible courage.
No doubt. Every time they went out in those whaleboats, they were risking their lives. And even when they succeeded, the danger wasn't over. Cutting in a whale, that whole process, incredibly grueling and dangerous.
One thing that surprised me was the gam. This kind of social gathering between whale ships.
Ah, yes. The gam. A unique custom. When two ships met at sea, they'd basically lash themselves together, and the crews would visit back and forth, share stories, trade supplies, get some much-needed human contact after weeks, sometimes months, of isolation.
It's interesting because whalers, they weren't exactly seen in the best light by other sailors, right?
True. They were considered rough, uncouth, their ships always reeking of blubber, but the gam, it offered them a bit of respite from that stigma, a chance to connect with others who understood the unique challenges of their profession.
Okay, so let's talk about Captain Ahab,
Yeah.
the driving force behind this whole story.
Ahab. His obsession with Moby-Dick, that white whale, it's the heart of the book, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just some abstract obsession. He carries a physical reminder with him everywhere he goes, his ivory peg leg.
A powerful symbol, a constant reminder of his encounter with the whale, the loss he suffered, the burning desire for revenge. And it's almost like a weapon, the way he slams it on the deck to make a point or intimidate the crew.
There's that scene where he baptizes the harpoons, makes the crew swear this oath of vengeance. It's chilling. You can see how his obsession is affecting everyone around him.
Absolutely. That scene really highlights the depth of his madness, how it warps reality for those around him. Even Stubb, the second mate, generally a jovial guy, he has this strange dream where Ahab kicks him, and he interprets it as an honor. It shows just how far Ahab's influence reaches.
It's disturbing, but captivating at the same time.
It is. But it's important to remember the bigger picture here. Whaling was a huge industry.
Right. It wasn't just about hunting giant white whales. There was a whole economic system built around it.
Exactly. Sperm whaling in particular played a vital role in the 19th century economy. Sperm oil, prized for its clarity, its high burning point, used for everything. Lighting lamps, lubricating machinery, even, get this, coronation oil.
Coronation oil. Wow. That's surprising.
Isn't it? Speaks to the value placed on sperm whales back then.
And to get this oil, they had to process the blubber in those massive ovens on deck, the try-works. I can only imagine the smell.
Oh, it must have been something else. The try-works, they were constantly burning day and night, rendering the blubber down into oil, the stench, the danger. It was a brutal business.
It makes you wonder, how did they even find these whales? Were they just sailing around hoping for the best?
Well, there was a bit of luck involved for sure, but they also relied on their knowledge of whale migration patterns, keeping an eye out for signs like flocks of birds feeding on fish, changes in water color, the spout of different species.
So there was a science to it, but also a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely. The ocean is vast, unpredictable, and it's that very vastness, that mystery, that Melville explores through the symbolism of the white whale.
Ah, yes, the white whale. He even dedicates a whole chapter to the color white. It has to mean something, right?
More than just the color of a whale, definitely. Melville uses white to represent, well, the vastness, the emptiness, the unknowability of the universe itself.
He brings up examples like the White Tower of London, a symbol of power and imprisonment, and the White Mountains, which evoke a sense of awe, even terror.
Exactly. White can be so many things: purity, innocence, but also emptiness, the void, alluring, terrifying. And that duality, that's at the heart of Moby-Dick's symbolism.
So Ahab's not just chasing a whale. He's confronting something much larger, something ultimately unknowable.
Now you're getting it. And that's what makes Moby-Dick such a powerful and enduring symbol, this representation of the forces of nature that we can never fully grasp, never truly control.
Welcome back. We've been talking about whaling and Ahab's crazy obsession with Moby-Dick. But what about the other people on the ship, like Queequeg?
Oh, Queequeg. He's a fascinating character. Really makes you think about how we judge people, savage versus civilized and all that.
Right. He's from a completely different culture, a South Seas island, and covered in tattoos.
But he quickly becomes Ishmael's best friend. And honestly, he shows more dignity and loyalty than many of the other supposedly civilized characters.
And spirituality, too. Remember that part where he builds his own coffin?
Oh, yeah, and then uses it as a bed when he thinks he's dying.
It's morbid, but you gotta admit, there's a bit of dark humor there, too.
Totally. That's Melville for you, mixing serious stuff with a touch of the absurd. But Queequeg's reaction to death, his acceptance of it, it says a lot about his worldview.
He's not afraid.
Not at all. And he's the first one to warn Ahab about Moby-Dick. He senses something supernatural about that whale.
Like a warning.
Exactly. Like, don't mess with this creature. It's not just any whale. But Ahab, well, he's too blinded by revenge to listen.
Speaking of danger, you mentioned how risky it was to cut in a whale. Can you, walk us through that process? What did it actually involve?
Picture this. A dead whale, lashed to the side of the Pequod. The deck, slippery with blood and oil. The stench, I can't even.
Oh, I bet.
And the crew, they're armed with these flensing knives, these wickedly sharp blades, and they're cutting away the blubber.
The blubber? How thick was that stuff?
Oh, sometimes feet thick. Heavy, slippery, and the smell. Just imagine.
And they weren't just going after any whale, right?
Yeah.
They were picky.
Of course. Sperm whales. They were the prize. Because of the spermaceti oil, you find it in their heads in this big cavity.
Their heads? That sounds bizarre. What's so special about this oil?
It's super clear. Burns really bright, perfect for lamps. And back then, it was used for all sorts of things. Lubricating machinery, even.
So the anatomy of the sperm whale, specifically its head, was key to the whole whaling business.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the sperm whale's head, it's this massive thing, takes up a third of its body. And that spermaceti organ, well, Melville describes it in such detail. He saw something almost mystical about it,
Yeah. Like it was connected to the whale's intelligence, the secrets of the deep.
Exactly. And it's no wonder Ahab gets so obsessed, right? There's this almost mythical aura surrounding sperm whales.
So sperm whales were top priority.
Yeah.
But they hunted other types too, right?
Yeah. Right whales. Called that because they were, well, the right ones to kill. Slow moving. Tended to float when dead. Made them easier to handle.
And then there were the finbacks. I remember you said they weren't as desirable. Why not?
Well, fin whales, they're fast, much harder to catch, and they yielded less oil. Not as profitable, you see.
So the type of whale really dictated the strategy, even the economics of whaling.
Absolutely. And that's part of what makes Moby-Dick so interesting. It's this mix of human ambition, scientific curiosity, and the raw power of nature, all colliding.
And speaking of ambition, those whalers, they were kind of explorers in a way, right?
In a way, yes. They were driven by profit, sure, but also by this thirst for the unknown, pushing the boundaries, mapping new territories.
So whalers were contributing to our knowledge of the world.
They were. Though, of course, they were also exploiting those whales. There's a definite moral gray area there. And Melville, he doesn't shy away from that.
He celebrates their courage, but also questions their actions.
Exactly. It's that complexity that makes the book so compelling, don't you think?
Yeah. And that tension, it's there in Ahab's character, too. Heroic, but also deeply flawed.
A walking contradiction. He wants to conquer, to understand, but that same drive leads to self-destruction.
He throws everything away for revenge. His ship, his crew, all for this one whale.
A classic tragic figure. And it all goes back to that white whale, that symbol of the vast, unknowable universe.
You said earlier that the color white represents that. Now, how does that connect to Ahab and his obsession?
Well, think about it. Ahab's chasing this white whale. He's trying to conquer something that represents the unknown, the things we can't control.
He wants to impose his will on something that's way bigger than him.
Exactly. And that's the tragedy of Ahab. He's fighting a battle he can't win. It's like trying to grab hold of the ocean itself.
And that's where we'll pause for now. But when we come back, we'll wrap things up and leave you with some final thoughts on Moby-Dick. Stay with us. We're back. This deep dive into Moby-Dick, it's been an eye-opener. I'm getting why people are still reading this book, even today.
Oh, yeah, it stays with you. All the symbolism, the characters, Melville's vision. It's powerful stuff.
As we wrap up, what are the key things you want our listeners to take away from all this?
I hope they understand just how dangerous and demanding 19th century whaling really was. It wasn't all romanticized sea adventures. Those descriptions of the try-works, the cutting in, the conditions on board, Melville really captures the brutal reality of it.
Right, and the lengths people would go to for profit. And in Ahab's case, revenge. Speaking of Ahab, his obsession, it's a pretty stark warning, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. His monomania, his unwillingness to let go, it destroys him. And everyone around him. It's a reminder, I think, about the dangers of letting ambition consume you.
But there's also something tragic about Ahab. He's grappling with big questions, right? Fate, free will, the meaning of life.
He's deeply flawed, sure, but that's what makes him so human, so relatable even. He represents those contradictions in all of us, the desire to explore, to conquer, but also our capacity for self-destruction.
And Queequeg, he's such a contrast to Ahab. He represents a different way of seeing the world.
Queequeg, he's labeled a savage, but he's the one who shows true compassion, loyalty. He reminds us that, we shouldn't judge based on appearances, that wisdom and understanding can come from unexpected places.
And his acceptance of death, the coffin thing, that was powerful.
It shows a level of, spiritual awareness that a lot of the other characters lack. They're too busy chasing whales, chasing money, chasing revenge. Queequeg, he offers a different perspective.
And then there's the white whale itself. Moby-Dick, this symbol of the vastness and mystery of the universe.
Melville's use of symbolism is incredible. The color white, for instance, it can mean so many things. Purity, innocence, but also emptiness, the void, the unknowable, like the ocean itself.
You mentioned earlier how Melville seemed fascinated by the sperm whale's head, that spermaceti organ. Do you think that ties into the symbolism of Moby-Dick?
Oh, absolutely. Melville saw something, I think, almost mystical in the sperm whale, especially that head. And the oil, of course. It represented those hidden depths, the secrets beneath the surface. Ahab, he's trying to penetrate those mysteries, to conquer something that's ultimately beyond our grasp.
So he's doomed from the start, really?
In a way, yes. He's up against something far greater than himself, something that represents the sublime, the beautiful and terrifying, the awe-inspiring and the unknowable.
Any final thoughts for our listeners, those about to dive into Moby-Dick themselves? What should they keep in mind?
Think about Ahab's final moments. He's lashed to the whale, going down with the ship. Is it a defeat? A twisted victory? Or something else? What does it tell us about obsession, about our attempts to conquer the things we can't control?
That's a great question to consider. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up our deep dive into Moby-Dick. We hope you enjoyed the journey and that it inspires you to explore the book for yourself.
Thanks for listening.